well. Excellent. So again, we're just going to wait just a moment for everyone to join the webinar before we get started. So we'll probably just wait another minute or two just in case there are any stragglers. Okay. Maybe we'll just wait 30 more seconds just to make sure everybody is able to join us who plans on coming. Thank you, Alex. Very, very happy to have you. Okay, well, welcome to the St. John's Graduate Institute webinar for the Ramsay Scholarship Postgraduate Program at St. John's Graduate Institute in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm Lauren Rotner. Some of you I've corresponded with. It's finally wonderful to be able to speak to you. It's in a live format. I'm very pleased to be joined by my two colleagues at the college who are going to be working with us in inviting you and hosting you at our Graduate Institute for the Master's Program in Liberal Arts. And so I'll begin just by introducing myself very quickly again. I'm Lauren Rodner. I'm the Special Assistant to the President at the college, and I've been working with Ramsay on our partnership. And I also am a visiting tutor at the college. So I teach part-time at the college and really enjoy it. We're joined by Emily Langston, who is the Associate Dean of Graduate Programs at St. John's in Annapolis. She's been a tutor at the college for 25 years, so since 1995. And she runs the Graduate Institute. So you'll certainly get to know her when you join us. The other gentleman who who's joining us is Brandon Wasisco. Brandon is a graduate of the Graduate Institute program, the MALA program, and is also the Associate Director of Graduate Student Services at the college. And really, his main role is to help you all navigate the application process and to answer any questions about student life at the college, and so he and I really work together in that, and we'll be helping you, come to America and attend the Graduate Institute. So without further ado, I mean, just to give you a sense of how we're going to proceed tonight, Emily is going to run through just some very basics about St. John's, the history of the program, and a little bit about the nuts and bolts of applying to the program. And we'll be joining her occasionally just to chime in. And then we're going to try to leave a really large space for questions. So I imagine some of you have questions on your mind. And so we want to make sure that you're able to ask them. At that time, too, Stephen McElnerney from the Ramsay Center, many of you know him. He will go ahead and join us at that time. We're going to promote him to be a panelist, and you'll be able to ask questions of him too. So without further ado, I just want to turn it over to Emily.
All right, hello everyone. I'm going to begin sharing my screen now, just a moment. There we go. As Lauren said, I'm Emily Langston. I'm the Associate Dean for Graduate Programs, which means that I'm the head of the Graduate Institute here at St. John's in Annapolis. I've been at the college for 25 years, and for the past 5 years or so, I've been the head of the graduate program. This will be the first and last PowerPoint that you'll see associated with St. John's. This is not our usual way of doing things, but at this distance, it seems like a good way of letting you know something about the program and starting a conversation about what we do here at the Graduate Institute. Well, all right. St. John's College is the third oldest college in the United States. It was founded as King William's School and changed its name when we no longer had a king. And the new program for which St. John's is famous, the all required Great Books program, that is the heart of the undergraduate experience at the college, began in 1937. The Graduate Institute was founded on our Santa Fe campus as the Teachers Institute in '67, and then opened in 1977 here in Annapolis. The Graduate Institute maintains a sort of special mission to teachers, but we found out quite quickly once we opened this discussion-based Great Books program aimed at adults that it wasn't only teachers who were interested in this kind of education, and that it was something that was sorely lacking in this country. And all sorts of people now attend the Graduate Institute. What are great books? I think probably those of you who are associated with the Ramsay Center don't need me to say a lot about this issue, but the great books that we're talking about at St. John's are the transformative texts that have formed the culture that we all inhabit now. And when we talk about them, we come to know ourselves better. We come to know better the world in which we live. We free ourselves from assumptions. We become able to think critically and appreciatively about our world. One of the things that you'll find at St. John's that is unusual is that we don't have any faculty members who are called professors. We don't have any rank among faculty members at all. All our faculty members are called tutors. This is because all of our faculty members teach throughout the curriculum. We're not allowed to specialize. Students aren't allowed to specialize, and so neither are we. And instead of getting into a classroom and professing something, we come to a classroom as the most experienced learner in the room. We're usually reading texts which are outside of our primary disciplines. And although we become familiar with these texts over the years, as I have in my 25 years at the college, we find that there's still things that we can learn from them in every encounter, especially since the classes are run completely through discussion. When I walk into a classroom, if I'm reading a text that I've read with students 10 times before, I still don't know which way the conversation is going to go. I don't know which points are going to be raised. I don't know where things are going to wind up. And so I really am not a professor. I am a learner, a role model, a facilitator, and yes, someone who knows a lot about the book, but I'm not trying to tell you what the book means in the same way that you might expect most professors to do. And this goes immediately into the third point, that we see the classroom as something like a republic of learning of which we're all citizens and in which we all work together to make sense of difficult texts and challenging issues, and in which we all treat one another with respect as co-citizens and co-inquirers. The Graduate Institute in Annapolis offers one degree, which is the Master of Arts in Liberal Arts. And the degree is divided up into 5 areas that we call segments. In order to get the full degree, you'll need to take 4 of these segments, and you'll have the choice of which 4 you want to take and which one you'll leave be for now. The names are listed there below. I'll just put in a little plug for mathematics and natural science. It surprises some people to see that one listed. In the undergraduate program at St. John's, almost half the credits in the 4 years are in history of mathematics and natural sciences, reading the great texts that have formed that part of the Western tradition. And in the Graduate Institute too, we like to give consideration to those texts as well. And students find it's a remarkably eye-opening part of the program. I think the rest of the titles there are probably self-explanatory. So the structure of our partnership with the Ramsay Center. Ramsay scholars will come to the Graduate Institute for 2 years. It's a 4-semester program, so you do a semester in the fall and then in the spring of your first year. Take the summer away from Graduate Institute classes, and then do another 2 semesters in the following year. Your first year at the Graduate Institute, you'd simply be immersing yourself in the work of the Institute here, and you'll be living in Annapolis, quite close to campus in a lovely house. And it's a great opportunity to really dive into the life of the college here. There are so many things to do. There are study groups, music groups, all sorts of things. And we really welcome you to enjoy being here and become a part of the life of the entire college, and also to enjoy Annapolis and the other cities that are in proximity to Annapolis. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to ask Lauren to come in here for a moment and talk about the summer study groups and internships and mentorship programs.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. So throughout your time as Ramsey Scholars, you'll be working with me one-on-one to help develop your career potential, and also to give you a sense of what the possibilities are for after the MALA. I'm also going to be helping guide you through really just an unbelievable number of internships that are possible in the area. I think Emily didn't mention this, but I should mention the fact that Annapolis is very close to Washington, D.C. I think we'll cover that in a slide in a moment. It's about 40 minutes roughly from Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., it's a big, sprawling metropolis. There's just innumerable numbers of great internships to look into. And so the field is really open. And we'll cover that a little bit on a slide coming up. During the summer of your experience, you'll be beginning your part-time internship, but you'll also be doing a summer study group. And the material for that has yet to be determined, but it'll certainly enrich your experience and connect you to your liberal arts education to the broader Western tradition and Western world. So look forward to that as well.
Thanks, Lauren. This is just a brief look at the typical schedule for the Graduate Institute. You'll see that classes are largely on Monday and Thursday evenings, unless you're taking ancient Greek, in which case you also have a class on Tuesday. Every Friday at the college, there's a lecture. It's optional, but the Friday night lecture is one of the sort of high points of the week for the undergraduate and graduate programs. Students gather to hear a lecture or a concert or sometimes some other type of event. And then it's always followed by a question period in which we gather to engage in conversation with one another about the lecture or the musical program or whatever it is that we've just experienced together. The Graduate Institute classes, like a lot of things at St. John's actually, have unusual names. They're called seminar, tutorial, and preceptorial. The seminar is a class in which you read in roughly chronological order great texts of the Western tradition within the subject area of the segment that you're taking. So great works of literature, say in the literature segment, starting with both of Homer's epics moving forward. The readings for the seminar are usually fairly lengthy, and the seminar lasts for 2 hours of sustained, fairly intense discussion of the text that you've read for that evening. The tutorial happens twice a week. It's a shorter class, an hour and 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. And the readings for the tutorial are shorter. They come from, again, classic texts from within the segment subject area. But what we're doing in the tutorial is usually looking at a shorter portion of text and then reading it more closely. So perhaps working our way through, you know, a few pages of a philosophical argument from Kant or Aristotle, or perhaps doing some Euclidean proofs, or in the literature tutorial, perhaps looking at a lyric poem in a lot of detail. So it's a different kind of reading, a different kind of concentration than what happens in the seminar. The preceptorial is the elective portion of the Graduate Institute program. Every semester, tutors offer preceptorials on books in which they're particularly interested. And we let you know what preceptorials are going to be offered in an upcoming semester. And then students choose which preceptorial they'd like to take. But the standard format of a preceptorial is a tutor and a small group of students gathering to study closely over a long period of time a book, or perhaps a series of plays, or something in which they're very interested in, which they want to give their sustained attention to. Preparing for class in any of these cases is really simply a matter of reading carefully and attentively, and thinking about the readings before you come to class, asking yourself questions about them. What puzzles me about this text? What excites me about this text? What do I want to know about how others in my class read this text? Those are the sorts of things that you might want to think about before you come to class. And I think almost every time you come to class, you'll leave with more questions than you came in with, but with deeper questions, better questions, and questions that will keep you talking with your colleagues from the class well after class is over. Satisfactory work at the graduate level at St. John's, and I think really in most graduate programs in the States, means work of a B- or above. The criteria for evaluation at St. John's really arise very naturally out of the sort of work that we do together. Attendance is an absolutely necessary part of being a part of the St. John's community and participating in our method of education. It's not as if, someone can take notes for you and you can look at them later, or you can see a recorded lecture or get the slides for the PowerPoint or something. Everything takes place through the conversation that we all have together, and we're all contributing to one another's learning. So if you're not there, not only do you miss the class, but everybody else misses having you in the class, because we come to know each other around the table, and we all are a part of this Republic of Learning, working together around the questions that we're examining. There are different types of evaluation then associated with the different classes. For the seminar, you have a short oral examination, which is not an examination in the sense that your tutor is going to ask you a lot of questions, hoping to, say gotcha when you don't get one of them right. You propose a topic having to do with one of the texts that you've been reading in the class, and then you and the tutor have a half-hour one-on-one conversation about that topic. And so the purpose of it is more to allow you to explore something in depth one-on-one with the faculty member, and for the faculty member to see you thinking on your feet, moving through the text easily, evaluating arguments, basically holding a really good conversation. In the tutorial, there are usually 2 short papers assigned, and every semester, every Graduate Institute student writes 1 longer essay, 12 to 14 pages usually, and that's for the preceptorial, and it's on the, obviously, the text that you've been reading with the tutor and others in the preceptorial. Every semester well, your first 2 semesters actually, you will have a conference with your tutors where you meet um, one student with all of your tutors for that semester, and your tutors speak to you about how you've been doing in the class, and you have in their classes, and you have a chance to respond. And so you and all your tutors together can just have a short conversation about your progress in the program. Um, the college has secured a beautiful apartment style building within a quick walk of the campus here. And it's very nice housing. You'll have single rooms, shared kitchens, I think shared bathrooms, but with very few others. Lauren might be able to speak to this more fully than I can. We have a dining hall, but and it's your choice whether you want to use the dining hall or whether you want to cook on your own or do something else. We have a gym, athletic fields. We're on the water, so we have a boathouse. We have access to rowing sculls, to um, sailboats, and you can learn how to sail. You can anyway have access to everything that the boathouse has to offer. We have the usual academic things to libraries, study rooms, computer labs, things like that. Those are all open to you. There are many social activities at the college. Ones that are particularly characteristic of the Graduate Institute are the after seminar gathering. Every Monday night after seminar at around 9:30, the graduate students gather in the Graduate Institute building for pizza, drinks, and conversation that just spills out from the seminar classrooms and continues at the after seminar gathering. There are a lot of study groups, which are informal, often spontaneous sorts of groups of students who have decided they just want to read something together that's not an official part of the program, and they meet regularly to do that. Bocce is the official Graduate Institute sport because you can have conversations really well while you're playing bocce, and you can hold a beer in one hand and a bocce ball in the other. I'm going to ask Laura now to talk a little bit about the internships. Some of the possibilities are listed here.
Yeah, so very happy to do this. So like I said, when I was giving my spiel a little bit earlier, Washington, D.C. is really a close drive away. The first year in the graduate program, you won't be doing an internship. You'll really be devoting yourself to the Graduate Institute MALA degree. And so you'll be living in Annapolis in this apartment style building that we've rented. But the second year, depending on where you intern and whether you'll need to be in person or not, I mean, some internships are remote and can be, you may choose to move to Washington, D.C. And we do have a contingent of graduate students who commute every Monday and Thursday from Washington, D.C. to Annapolis to attend their Graduate Institute classes in the evening. So it is definitely feasible to do an internship in Washington, D.C. while you're enrolled in the Graduate Institute, and that's what we're hoping for you. I've listed here a sort of sample of many different institutions and places where our graduates have interned in the past. We have some really good connections to a lot of places in Washington, D.C. Some of these places you might have heard of course, the Washington Post. Some of them you might not have heard of, and it would, all be working with you individually to determine where your interests lie and to try to figure out what a good fit for you would be. So the one thing to note on this list, I mean, most of these are sort of self-explanatory as categories. I mean, the one thing that maybe you may not know about are think tanks. In the United States, there is a big, long tradition now of these things called think tanks. And they are sort of semi-academic, I mean, is the best way to put them, semi-academic institutions that study a variety of different public policy questions, but also foreign affairs, all sorts of stuff, usually from a particular intellectual tradition or a particular political persuasion, but not always. And there are a ton of them in Washington, D.C. And they're a good place to intern because you get to meet a lot of different scholars from a lot of different fields, and you get to they do a lot of events and they bring in a lot of speakers, and so that's just something maybe to my impression is that in Australia think tanks are not as prominent, and so it's just something to look into a little bit in terms of your internship for your second year. But by no means do you have to intern in a think tank. By no means do you have to intern at any of these places on this list. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of where we've sent people in the past and where we can send people in the future. Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions about internships during the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, there's the city of Annapolis, and that is actually a picture. On the right, you can see the Capitol building of Maryland, glowing yellow for some reason, and we're famous for sailing in Annapolis. It's the sailing capital of the United States. It's a lovely old colonial town with a lot of restaurants, shops, coffee shops. It's very, very walkable. It's a really nice place to live. In addition to Washington, D.C., we're also very close to Baltimore, which is another great city. And there also are internship opportunities in Baltimore and a lot of cultural activities in Baltimore. The Eastern Shore, which has Atlantic beaches, is a short drive away. And actually, we're a short train ride or coach ride from Philadelphia and even New York City. So we're really located in a fantastic place on the East Coast for experiencing a lot of different um, important metropolitan areas in the U.S. and just seeing a lot of different types um, of both of towns and rural areas. So here's the application process. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. It points out the different due dates that you have for various things. You apply first to St. John's, and after the admission decision from St. John's, you would apply to Ramsay. And after you've accepted both St. John's admission and the Ramsay scholarship offer, you would begin your work on getting coming to the United States and just getting moved over here. Um, at this point, I want to ask Brandon to come in and introduce himself again and just say a word or two. He's the person who will be helping you through almost everything about enrolling in the Graduate Institute after your acceptance. And as Lauren said, he's also a graduate of the graduate program here. So he's really a great resource, not just on this kind of thing, although he's fantastic on the administrative side of things, but on academic questions, student life questions, anything you may want to know about the program.
Sure. So good morning to everyone there. As far as the application process goes, we have a dedicated graduate admissions officer who will be able to work with you throughout the process, guiding you, talking about transcripts, anything that you need to complete that process. After that's all reviewed, and if you're admitted and go through the Ramsay process here, we also have a number of people on staff, and I'm currently going through the process of training and certifying on this to help with the immigration process, the visa process, all of the sort of nitty-gritty things that you'll do as part of the process of moving here, the less fun bits of it. And one of the good benefits, I think, of having, I've previously worked in the Washington, D.C. area for a number of years in the nonprofit world. I've taught overseas. I came to the Graduate Institute directly from a teaching position in Vietnam, having never visited the city of Annapolis before or the campus. So while not exactly the same situation, I do know what it's like to sort of jump into something that looks promising, that you're excited about, without actually having visited the physical place that you're going to be living for the next 2 years. So I'm happy to talk about that. Always happy to engage with the program. Part of the thing that I'll be doing is coordinating the study groups and dissemination of information, and working with our graduate student leaders, putting on some of our social events and other activities like that. And again, happy to answer more about any of that in the Q&A.
The application materials, really the most important part of the application materials to us is the essay. It falls into 3 parts: a discussion of your previous educational experience, your reasons for interest in the St. John's Graduate Institute program, and then a reflection on a book that has had an influence on you in some important way. 6 to 9 pages. You can divide up the portions of the essay in the way that you think best. But you should just know that we're really interested in the essays. We read them very closely. It's not just an academic exercise. That's what we want to know, why you want to be here. We want to know something about what you think about as being important to you educationally, what sorts of books and questions you find compelling. So look forward to reading your essays. Then just 2 academic references, hopefully from professors who know you well from your undergraduate experience, and the transcripts, your undergraduate transcripts from institutions where you've earned credit. And that's the end of the PowerPoint. I do encourage you to read the St. John's statement of the program. We don't have a catalog that goes through the, course descriptions and credits and things like that that most universities have. What we have instead is the statement of the program. There's a portion of that that applies specifically to the graduate program. It's worth reading the whole thing because we see education at St. John's in a very holistic way. And the statement of the program is about the classes that we offer, but it's also about our educational philosophy, what we think about the way that we select the books that we read, how we understand our life as an intellectual community. So yeah, I would suggest that you read it. Thank you for listening to this, and I'm now going to turn it back over to Lauren, and we'll start the question and answer.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Emily, for that. And I'm going to go ahead at this time and just promote Stephen McInerney to panelist so he can join us on stage here. And I think he should be visible shortly if he wants to be. There we go. Thank you, Stephen. And so we're happy. You can either what you can do in terms of asking questions, you can either type them in the Q&A down at the bottom of the screen. If you click the Q&A button, you're more than welcome to ask them that way. You can also raise your hand, and if you would like to ask your question verbally, you're welcome to do that. I'm able to, I'll track who's raised their hand, and I can unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your question that way. So happy to open the floor. One thing maybe I'll just add very quickly just about the housing. It's a 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom apartment. So in fact, you won't really be sharing a bathroom. You'll have your own bathroom, just to correct that. And they're furnished units, which is really nice. I mean, I'll be honest with you, these things are beautiful. The apartment, I'm very pleased what we've been able to achieve. It's a really beautiful apartment. I'm envious of it. And I think you guys will very much be very, very pleased with it. So it'll be a kind of communal environment. I mean, you'll get to live with one another and form connections with one another. There's a shared kitchen, but otherwise, I guess that's all there is to say about that. Maybe I'll say one more thing quickly about a car. Annapolis, unlike maybe some locations in Australia, doesn't have the best public transportation. And a car is really advisable. It's really, I would say, necessary, especially if you want to explore the broader region. And there's a lot to do here, and there's a lot the region offers. So I think what I've proposed with Stephen, and I think what makes sense, is to really have the group buy 1 car or 2 cars as a group, and used cars, rather cheap used cars, and then share them. So trips to the grocery store, trips to the movie theater, stuff like that will all be possible that way. But that's something we can really figure out, I think, into the future. And I'm open to a variety of different suggestions or options. Okay, I don't want to talk anymore. So whenever you guys are ready, if you have any questions, I guess we do have some questions. Oops.
Actually, there's one about the ancient Greek preceptorial. Ancient Greek is actually required of all of our undergraduates, but for the graduates program, it's optional. It's offered as the preceptorial, and most of the time people take it both in the fall and in the spring, so that you have an entire you can get an entire year's worth of it under your belt. Although even taking it just in the fall at the beginning, you can get enough to be able to use a lexicon and to help you understand things as you're reading. But so much of the philosophy that we keep returning to at St. John's has its origin in ancient Greece, that having an ongoing, Greek preceptorial and just a community of people here at the college who are interested in reading ancient Greek, it's been an important part of who we are for a long time.
In terms of COVID contingencies, I'm happy to answer that, Theodore. So we obviously we're going to track very carefully and closely the local environment in the United States, and we're obviously sensitive. I mean, if travel is not possible, then we might have to delay the program. And so I think right now the college as a whole right now is online. And I think we're going to have to sort of play it by ear. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but we'll have to we're going to track very closely and watch as the situation unfolds. And there will be a lot of communication back and forth. I wouldn't discourage anybody from applying. I think you should apply if you do want to do this program, and if it gets delayed, we will obviously take that into account. And when you're admitted to at least to St. John's, your admission stands for the future. So you won't have to reapply or anything like that. So I'm sorry I can't provide anything more definite along those lines. But that's that. Okay, so in terms of, I think Mr. Tim Dubber, I think he had a question. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk now. So just go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you there, Lauren. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Maybe a little bit of a specific question. I'm a Australian Army member, And at this stage, I'll have to have a discussion with my career manager with regards to whether or not I'll retain full-time serving or reservist status as I move over to the States. Is there any issues with regards to holding a visa over in the States and continuing reservist service, potentially working with the defense attaché at the embassy or at one of the schools based in and around Washington? Or will I be able to work reserves, even if it is like remote via like we have our own like remote system that I can potentially work on as well?
That's a really interesting question. I think I think we're going to have to talk to the embassy about that. I think that's probably a really, it's a very specific case. And so I thank you for raising it. And I think, Tim, offline, we should be in touch about that. And I will connect you to resources at the embassy. And I think we should clarify that. But I'm sorry, I can't provide you any further answer. My suspicion is that you won't be barred from obtaining a student visa to the United States. But I can't give you any definitive answer in regard to that. So go ahead and email me, and we'll be sure to follow up on that.
Cheers, Lauren.
So, okay, Theodore has a question. What does the scholarship cover? Only tuition, also travel, etc. Stephen, did you maybe want to talk to that a little bit? Happy to have you do that if you'd like.
Sure. Thanks, Lauren. And hi again, Lauren and Emily. And nice to meet you, Brandon. And I should just say how excited I am and we are at the Ramsay Centre about this partnership. And we're so looking forward to the students applying when we see their applications for the Ramsay Scholarship, and can't wait to see the first Ramsay scholars going to St John's next year. In terms of what the scholarship covers, it's 60,000 Australian dollars, and that can be put towards tuition, travel, accommodation, and living expenses. There may be some additional contingency that the centre will provide, and maybe an additional 7,000 Australian dollars. So in effect, it would come out at 67,000 Australian dollars, which, according to the calculations we've done, once you incorporate the St John's fees and the accommodation costs and so on, we think will cover most students in most cases. Obviously, there'll be exceptions, but yes. So in terms of giving an account of how that money's spent, that we won't require receipts for meals or anything like that. We just need to see that you've paid your fees and you're using the money for the purpose that it's being awarded.
Great. Jesse Christian has a question. Are there any research opportunities that graduate students can get involved with on campus? Emily, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I can address that. We're not a research university, and so it's not the sort of thing that that usually happens here. What does happen sometimes is that individual graduate students will end up working closely with a tutor on some issue or project that the tutor and the graduate student are both interested in, but that would be pretty much an ad hoc arrangement that might happen. We really are a place that puts our emphasis entirely on teaching and on the intellectual exploration of these texts and the questions that they raise. On the other hand, depending upon what sort of research you're interested in, it seems to me like the internships and the opportunities near us in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and other places might offer depending upon what you're looking for, might offer you a lot of opportunities. We are close to, many institutes of higher education, many opportunities to do research with government agencies as well. So that's something that you should probably take up on an individual basis with Lauren. But as on the campus, no, it's not really. It's not really a part of our program.
Theodore has another question. Would a prior master's be disqualifying for this scholarship? And maybe Emily, you can speak to that, just maybe in general about the Graduate Institute and prior degrees.
I don't know, and maybe Stephen can speak to whether, from the perspective of the Ramsay Center, it might be disqualifying. The Graduate Institute has students with all sorts of prior degrees enrolled. We have several students enrolled right now who have PhD degrees. We have medical doctors, lawyers, people with many people with prior MA degrees, as well as people just out of university. We welcome people to the Graduate Institute with an age range from about 22 all the way through people in their 70s and occasionally people older than that. And they really come because they want to engage in this education. Some of them come because they want the degree, but many of them are just here because they want to do this, to engage in reading and asking these questions. Stephen?
Thanks, Emily. Look, it wouldn't disqualify a candidate for the scholarship. I mean, it might if the Masters was the Masters of Arts in Liberal Arts from St John's College, it might disqualify you. But,
Yeah.
but look, most Masters, even within arts faculties, are very different from this, certainly pedagogically. And I would say the whole experience would be very different. And so, no, it won't in and of itself disqualify you.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Alex has a question. Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to add to Theodore's question. I noticed the undergrad heavily involves learning music. Are there any of those elements in the master's program?
You know, I wish that there could be. The undergraduates are lucky; they have 4 full years to do this, and the master's program is only 2 years, and so there's some things that we don't get to, pursue in the depth that we'd like to. We make, we just have to make decisions. Music does come up as a preceptorial topic from time to time. And there are a lot of study groups about music going on campus, usually because the undergraduates all study music. Again, it's part of the required curriculum. So there are faculty who are very interested in music. There are students studying music together. There are a lot of music groups, chorus, orchestra, small chamber singing groups, all kinds of things. So a lot of opportunities for music, but no, it's not a core part of the master's program.
Great. Mark has a question. He graduated from university in 2018, and he's been in the workforce for 2 years. He asked, will I still need academic references?
Yes, unless there's some, very good reason that you can't get them. We're always happy to talk individually with applicants, about their specific circumstances, but generally in that circumstance, yes.
Great. Paul has a couple of questions. We'll start with the first. What are the typical living expenses of student life, and remarks about housing and cars, etc. Brandon, I think, could probably, since he, lived here as a graduate student in Annapolis, maybe could speak a little bit to that. I mean, I'll say, the housing cost will be about $1,300. And then I think it would be, reasonable maybe to budget another, at the most $600 to $800 American for the remainder per month of your expenses. It's not an excessively expensive city, but it's not a cheap city either. And so does that sound about right to you, Brandon? Or maybe you could chime in.
Yeah, I think that's roughly right. I mean, it's a very generous scholarship. I don't see you having needs unmet by the scholarship when it all comes down to it. Um, let's see. Yeah, the housing will be sort of a fixed cost there on groceries. You'll be looking at 200-300 American a month. There are numerous restaurants and coffee shops, other things very close to the campus. Again, a lot of stuff within walking distance in the historic district that we're located in. But all told, I think that's about right where Lauren put it.
I mean, look, if you want to go to New York and see a Broadway show, it might, it might set you back a couple $100. And so there might be some things that you might want to avail yourself of, given our location, that might require a little out of pocket expense. But it seems to me that as Brandon said, the stipend will be very sufficient. It should be very sufficient. So Paul has another question. What are the requirements, re passports, visas, and other immigration requirements? This is a good question, Paul, and I'm happy to help you navigate it. We've got several people on staff to do it. It's not that complex. Student visas from Australia are pretty easily obtained. And it's really just a matter of filling out the right paperwork and going through the right procedures and getting an appointment with your local embassy, for instance. So it's, we will, when you get admitted to the program, both the Annapolis program and then the Ramsay program, we will begin working with you one-on-one to help you navigate that process and make sure that you complete everything on time. And then Paul has an additional question. What happens during the winter break after the first fall semester? It's a good question, Paul. One possibility would be, I think you are permitted to return home as an F1 student. The winter break is not super lengthy. It's typically 3 to 4 weeks. And so a lot of students do just remain in Annapolis and avail themselves of the opportunities locally. So that could be something, depending on your own preferences that you would think about. Okay, so let's see. Mark has a question. Will the program allow travel around the US and Canada? I'm happy to answer the question about the U.S. Canada. I think is another question. I'm not exactly sure the answer to that. It will certainly allow travel around the U.S. Like for instance, during breaks, you would certainly be allowed to travel around the United States. I'm not sure about Canada actually. That's a good question. I'm not sure what the F1 visa allows. And I suspect that it may not allow travel to Canada. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more, but you'll certainly be able to travel around the United States. Does anybody else have anything to add on that?
I would just add that given the setup of the schedule, there's the break in the winter. Our spring break is always 2 weeks long, usually the first 2 weeks of March or second and third week of March. As a student, I traveled for the entire length of that time on numerous occasions. And your classes, Mondays and Thursdays, you always have a long weekend of Friday through the weekend and then until Monday evening when classes resume at 5. So local trips, New York is about 3 hours or so, depending on the mode of transit. Doing, quick getaways like that to kind of go explore places for a couple of days and still keep up with the reading while you're in transit is absolutely doable, and I think a great way to supplement what you're doing in the program.
Great, thank you, Brandon. Alex asks, will we need to supply our own books or will they be supplied? I understand note-taking in books is critical, and he's happy to bring some from his great book set. I'm happy to have anybody answer this. I mean, maybe I'll just say quickly, they won't be supplied, so you'll need to obtain your own books, and I would recommend that. We have a bookstore on campus that has, it's really a wonderful bookstore. It really contains just many different translations and editions of all the books on our reading list. But we also have a library. That's so if you feel like or you don't want to buy your own books, we have a library with many copies of all the books on our program. But does anybody else want to add anything on that?
You know, we generally think it's better for people to have their own books. We don't supply them. As Lauren said, the bookstore is a great resource. It has translations of the texts that we read that have been sort of approved and vetted by faculty members. We actually don't tend to all have the same translation of a book around the table when we're reading something together, but we do like to all have translations of a book that you know the faculty generally agree are good translations, even if they're different. So that's available. Honestly, students buy since the books that we read together are not textbooks per se; they're just great books. They're available all over the place. There are copies of them available online. You can buy them at bookstores almost anywhere. Um, and so, yeah, we just encourage you to get them wherever it's convenient for you to get them.
Yeah, and I would recommend not, you can, the reading lists are available online. So if you want to get started reading in advance, you're of course welcome to. And if you have any questions about editions or translations or whatever, feel free to ask me or Brandon or Emily. I mean, we'd happily answer any questions in regard to that. Mark has a question. What kinds of jobs do St. John's Ramsay scholars at St. John's have in Australia once they finish the program? Is there an alumni network and support after completing the program? And I think for that, this is the inaugural program, the first year we're running this program. And so maybe I'll turn that over to Stephen and he can chat a little bit about the plans for that.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, we will have events for alumni once we have alumni, which will be in a few years' time. And so students that are, former students that are back in Australia will have access to events at the Ramsay Centre, and we'll put on different events through the year. And some of those will be large events because we, of course, also will have undergraduate alumni from our partnerships here. So there'll be events for everyone that's connected to the centre, but we'll also have smaller events where we simply get a few people together and go out for lunch and sort of see what's happening. So yes, there will be an alumni association and alumni events. And in terms of work, I mean, the sky's the limit, and of course it depends on other things you've done in your undergraduate studies and even your careers to date, what you might do post St. John's. It doesn't lead to one specific outcome in terms of jobs. So I think it just opens up so many doors and opportunities.
And maybe I'll just add quickly that the internship program is really designed to give you I mean, you don't necessarily have to be in the same internship for the entire time, right? You can experiment with a variety of different careers and fields. And it's really designed to give you a taste of what's out there. My recommendation would be to come in with just really an open mind about what you could potentially be interested in and sort of explore. You can certainly explore before you get here, but when you're here, you'll explore and discover a lot of new opportunities or new avenues that maybe you weren't aware of before. Let's see, do we have any other? Brandon, do you want to chime in on that?
Well, yeah, I just want to be sure we don't miss, Nathan has a question that I think was put in the chat here for Stephen. We talked about the St. John's application process. He's asking a bit about just a quick overview of the Ramsay process.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon and Nathan. So the first step, as Emily mentioned, is to apply to St. John's. Our applications open formally on the 1st of February. So all the information is on the website, but the actual application portal goes live on the 1st of February. So to complete an application, you need to address the selection criteria. So there'll be a question which allows you to respond to each of the selection criteria. You also need to talk about your future goals in there. You also need to provide 3 references from 3 referees, one of whom needs to be able to speak about your academic career to date or your potential, and the other 2, or one of those could speak about your academic career as well, but the other just more generally. That might be a colleague, it might be someone you've worked with, might be your boss, anyone really who can speak about your character and can also describe your ability to meet those selection criteria. So the selection criteria are listed on the website both in brief and in detail, but the first is strength of character, leadership potential. The second is academic achievement, and the third is what we've described it as is the ability to advance an appreciation of Western civilization, broadly defined. And of course, to do that, you first need to gain that appreciation, and so to address that criterion should be very easy, because you need to basically talk about how this program can help you gain an understanding and then pass that understanding on to others in the future. Academic transcripts, you'll need to provide those to us as well, your undergraduate transcripts, and if you've done any graduate work, those as well. You've got all of February and March to do that application online. You can save it as you go in the portal, and you can submit it as soon as it's ready in that time period, but then no later than the end of March. Thereafter, we have a shortlisting process. We have academics both from the centre and elsewhere who will do the shortlisting of all the applicants for the scholarship, and those who are shortlisted will be invited to interview, and the interviews take place in May at the centre. But if you're unable to be in Sydney for whatever reason, then via Zoom. And the St. John's applicants, those who are applying for the St. John's scholarship, will be evaluated by a panel of 3, which will be a sub-panel of a larger panel of 9. The decisions are made fairly promptly thereafter, and you'll be notified within a week or 2. At that point, if you're successful in your scholarship application and you've got your place at St. John's, by then, of course, you can begin the visa process.
Terrific. Thanks, Stephen. Maybe I'll just leave another couple minutes, or maybe just a minute, to see if anybody else has any questions. Do any of our illustrious panelists have anything they'd like to add or say?
I'll just say that when we first secured this wonderful partnership, that the problem we have in the centre is all these people who work for us who want to go over and get the scholarship. Of course, they're ineligible because they work for the centre, but there was a mass exodus on the cards at one point with people wanting to leave Sydney and go and do the program.
That's great. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I'll just emphasize one point that I think has been covered, but the depth of the community here, both the graduate students that you'll meet, the tutors that you'll get to know one-on-one, the undergraduate community, and our very active alumni when you come here, you really become a part of that community. And there's a lot more, I think, that will be going on outside the academics, outside the classroom, that are supportive of what you're doing, that help make this a truly rounded and humane experience that goes beyond, you know, the credentialing of getting a master's degree, right? And that is an important part of it, but it's not all there is having those letters after your name. And I certainly found that here, and I think you'll find in combination with the program, the people you meet, your work experience through the internship and getting encountered with all of that, that it's really something you won't be able to replicate. It's a very special experience. It was for me, and I certainly hope to be welcoming many of you here in less than a year's time.
Thank you very much, Brandon. Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining me. And if there are any questions that occur to you after this, feel free to email me or Brandon or Emily. We'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, I really appreciate your attention and wish you the best as you go through this process. So I think that's it. Thanks so much. Thank you, panelists.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
For the
Thanks
rest
so
of your day,
much.
take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.